What do you call it when you deliver a cutting insult to an effective altruist? You call it a Peter Zinger. Yes, if you step to an effective altruist and say, hey, your plan doesn't maximize qualies over the long run future, then bam, you just nailed them with a Peter Zinger. Anyway, this episode will feature two segments: Apply Psychology, in which I'll talk about how it is that cognitive biases evolved, and Check This Rec, in which I will provide you with a recommendation of a book, article, podcast that perhaps you are not familiar with. Let's get into it. We are products of evolution, so our behavior is nowhere near random. Our behavior looks goal-directed, because it is, and what we do mostly makes sense given our goals. We would expect evolution to make us good at perceiving reality accurately, because that helps us achieve our goals. And that is what we see. We are generally quite good at perceiving the world accurately. If we're standing at the edge of a cliff, we're good at perceiving that and then not stepping off of the cliff. In general, having true beliefs and being able to make valid inferences is adaptive. But, of course, there are many, many ways our minds go wrong, ways that we systematically deviate from rationality. We're all biased, we have systematically incorrect beliefs, and we make systematic mistakes in our judgment. In this segment, I'm going to talk about why that is. Why are we riddled with biases if it's generally adaptive for us to perceive the world accurately? First, I'll talk about explanations that I disagree with. One explanation for how biases evolve that has been put forward is known as error management theory. Error management theory is based on the following framework. If you are making a decision under uncertainty, there are two types of errors you can make. You can make a type 1 error, also known as a false positive, which would mean detecting something that isn't present. Or you could make a type 2 error, also known as a false negative, failing to detect something that is present. For example, smoke detectors are meant to alert us to the presence of fire, in particular a fire that can do significant damage. If a smoke detector goes off, even though there is no fire, you can call that a false positive. The smoke detector is signaling that fire is present even though it isn't. If there's a fire and the smoke detector fails to go off, you can call that a false negative. According to error management theory, sometimes the costs associated with false positives and false negatives are asymmetric, and this can lead to a bias in the decision-making procedure. For example, you would prefer to have a smoke detector that is too sensitive, because being annoyed by the smoke detector going off, even when there is no fire, is not as bad as the smoke detector failing to go off when there is a fire. So, given that these can't be perfect, smoke detectors are designed so that they always go off if there might be a fire, at the cost of going off too often when there isn't a fire. The classic application of error management theory is in sexual overperception biases. In one version of this kind of study, men and women are given a list of dating behaviors that could potentially indicate a romantic interest. Women are instructed to rate how likely they would be to have sex with a man that they were dating, given that they had engaged in this behavior, that the woman herself had engaged in this behavior. The behaviors include holding hands, cooking dinner, kissing, staring deeply into his eyes. And for each of those behaviors, women would rate what their sexual intent would be if they had engaged in each behavior.